Hey guys, your awareness and coping worksheet, I created that so you guys can identify your triggers. And I want you guys to have them written down on this worksheet. And as you're writing them, you're going to become super aware of your relapse triggers because they're not just psychological, they're also biological triggers. And they're pretty deeply wired into your nervous system, into your like reward network, which doesn't just run in your brain, it runs throughout your whole body and your cells even, right? Like your biological processes. They're pretty hardwired. So when you recognize them, the bottom line is you can get control over your triggers and then recovery becomes a lot easier for you. So yeah, this worksheet helps you identify situations where you're like most tempted to use so you can just prepare for them in advance. So on your sheet, you're going to see four types of triggers. You're going to see physical, you're going to see emotional triggers, situational triggers, and cognitive triggers. Honestly, I would really like it if you had triggers listed from each category or check off some of the ones that I listed in the workbook, but there's like so many. So think about your own life. But first, let's get into the physical triggers. So these are things that your body does, like actual withdrawals, like pain and tiredness and headaches. This is triggered by a part of your brain called the insula. I'm not going to get too science heavy on this, even though I would love to. But for your sake, I'm just going to say like this is a part of your brain that processes pain and discomfort. So what happens is when it does that, it's trying to get you to reuse again because it's like, oh, this is an easy answer. These substances give you the relief. So when you feel this type of trigger, it's coming from your body experiencing a dopamine deficit, which means that you're craving a quick fix because you're depleted of dopamine. So this is where you would really need to figure out what alternative ways you can, what strategies you can put in place, like cold showers. The greatest way to give yourself like long-term consistent dopamine, like breath work can release dopamine. But first, I want you guys to put down, like before we even start problem solving this, first write down what your triggers are. So, for example, one physical trigger is like I wake up and I'm already feeling exhausted and I just want an energy boost, or I get a pounding headache, maybe like after a long day or at work or whatever. And I remember like how much a drink used to help me. That's a physical trigger right there. Or like, my body hurts and I think about, how I don't want to deal with it and I don't want to feel into it. So that's, one really solid like physical trigger. Or I just feel restless. I can't sit still. I'm uncomfortable in my skin. I want something that just takes the edge off. That could be a physical trigger. So think about yours. Another common one that I hear a lot is like when I can't sleep and my brain just starts convincing me that a little bit of this, like a little bit of opiates or a little bit of alcohol is going to help me sleep. And guys, as you're thinking about these triggers for yourself, remember that these triggers, they feel so strong because your dopamine is crashing, okay? But what you really need to understand is that if you continue to give yourself dopamine this way, it's gonna create a bigger like dopamine deficit over time. So you have to train your brain to find a different way of relieving that dopamine deficit. Different sources, like things that will naturally bring your dopamine up, right? So even getting in the habit of like something simple as like stretching, like shaking out your body. Um, Cold showers like that, I'm always such a big proponent of. Like I've been taking cold showers now for like over 6 years, just because it's not just a signal for your body to wake up, but your body in anticipation of what's coming up starts already releasing dopamine. You can hack like breath, your breath, like box breathing, where you inhale for 4 seconds and then you hold for 4 seconds and then you exhale for four, or you could do a longer exhale than your inhale. That's actually going to release also oxytocin in your body. So another way to stay away from like all of these physical symptoms that I was talking about, the physical triggers like tiredness and achiness and all of that can just be solved by good hydration and good nutrition. Because most of the time when we're experiencing tiredness, it's dehydration. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, I drink a lot of water. Like, I'm probably not dehydrated. And it's like, yeah, you might be getting water, but you might not be getting electrolytes. And actually, just by drinking more and more water, you might be dehydrating your body more because now you're depleting your sodium and your potassium levels, quite possibly your, magnesium levels. So that could be creating more dehydration because your cells don't know how to like absorb just water. That's why you'll just, like you'll just go to the bathroom and you'll just pee it out for the most part because you're not actually retaining, your body's not retaining it. So look into your dehydration and get some nice electrolytes. And also like obviously nutrition wise, right? Like a lot of times when you're feeling agitated, angry, you're just hangry, your blood sugar is really low. So guys, please take a second and think about like what are your physical triggers? Like what physically happens in your body that makes you crave relief. Okay, so write these things down and stop the video. Let's stop the video here to go through the physical triggers and identify them, please, and write them down. This is also a good time, like for any questions or reflections that you have, like it's a good time for us to do that. So go do it now. Okay, so hopefully you stopped the video and you actually did the exercise. So now I can get into emotional triggers, and this is so good. Like this is a big one. So I'm going to spend a lot of time here because now we're dealing with things like depression, anxiety, anger, even happiness, okay? And the quickest and easiest way that I can explain that, I say easiest way, but most of the time it's like, oh, Sammy's going to talk about neuroscience. Yes, I'm going to talk about a little bit of neuroscience. Okay. So your prefrontal cortex, your logical center, which is right here behind your forehead, that's responsible for all of your like logic, math, science, language, all of those things come from your prefrontal cortex. That's your logical center. And then you have your emotional brain, which if I were to put my hands straight through my head and like go down, that's where my limbic brain or my emotional brain is. So what happens throughout the day is your logical brain, let's just say this is your logical brain, and your emotional brain, they just kind of like battle each other for control. And what happens is your body is looking for that dopamine, right? And substances give you a false dopamine spike, which reinforces addiction. And what I mean by a fake or false dopamine spike is that drugs and alcohol doesn't really follow the natural rules of how dopamine is supposed to be released. It's an artificial hacking of the dopamine system because normally this is how you would this is how you would experience dopamine. Dopamine is meant to be released in like tiny, tiny amounts. When you achieve something meaningful, like you eat a good meal or you exercise or you like go and you bond with people, you complete a tiny goal, you're supposed to get a hit of dopamine. It's kind of like you buy something and you get a receipt, right? So dopamine is your way of getting a receipt for something good that you did. Just enough. It gives you just enough dopamine that you can, process it, and then your mind slowly resets so that you can be motivated, right? To repeat that behavior. That's what dopamine is really meant to be for. But how drugs and alcohol hijack the dopamine system is when substances fill your brain, like they flood it. And it's just way too much dopamine at once. Like it's like 10x, the natural rewards, like it's a lot. And instead of now a gradual controlled release, now substances create like this massive kind of surge, and it feels like euphoria, but it's not good for you, obviously, because, well, one of the reasons it's not good for you is because it's bypassing the effort and reward system. So basically your brain knows that it didn't work for that dopamine, and that's why it doesn't reinforce the healthy behaviors. And honestly, what's happening, the way I like to think of it, is kind of like credit cards, where like the brain is compensating for the low dopamine and removing like dopamine receptors. So you get less dopamine now from like normal things like relationships and hobbies and like food and work. And that's why nothing feels exciting after, substance use, after a few times of substance use. Like some people will even like after 2 weeks of, doing some like strong drug, they'll just be like, oh yeah, I don't feel like doing anything anymore. Like nothing else brings me pleasure. For some people, yeah, it takes like a little bit longer for that kind of tolerance to build up, but everybody no one can really uh not feel the effect of it. Like everyone's going to feel it to a certain extent. And over time, the same amount of dopamine doesn't even feel as good because basically your brain is adapted. You now need more and more just to feel normal. And that's what creates like dependence and addiction. And, and when you're creating dopamine through a natural way, this is another way that it's different, is like it's gonna, like, substances give you an instant gratification. And, when you create dopamine through natural ways, it's like sustainable because drugs are like fast, effortless dopamine. And natural dopamine is only released when you engage with life. Like you have to go out and engage with life to get that reward, but drugs will give it to you really fast, and that creates an illusion. It's an illusion of satisfaction because you don't really get true fulfillment from it, because deep inside it always comes with a side of guilt, and I don't have to convince you of that. You know that from your life, right? So when a dopamine spike is substance induced, and this is where the credit card thing that I was telling you guys about is like, it's like you spending on a credit card that you don't have a way to pay back. Like there's no actual money in the bank and you're spending it on a card that's linked to that bank, but there's no money in it. That means you're getting something up front, you're getting the pleasure up front, you're getting the dopamine up front, but you're racking up a debt that makes it harder for you to experience joy later, because now you're running in deficit, because real dopamine is meant to be earned through life experiences. And fake dopamine, as I call it, like fake dopamine, is borrowed. It's like borrowed from your future. So you're saying, give me this high now and I'll pay for it in the long run. Like that's honestly, like if you look back, you've paid for your dopamine highs every single time. Like there is no person that I talk to about this that's like, oh yeah, I did a ton of it and didn't have to pay it back. No, you pay for it through your life experiences, and basically life will get it out of you. It's like it's a debt, either through you having to spend like so much more time in recovery now, or by using up a lot of your money, you messing up your relationships, right? So all of these things. And also your brain, like even after quitting, if that's why recovery feels so flat and so unenergizing, because when someone stops using, they go through a kind of a deficit period because your brain is used to getting flooded with dopamine. And now when you're not getting that, everything's going to feel a little flat, like a little boring, like gray, right? Like everything looks gray. People even explain like their vision, like everything looks grayer. It doesn't have color. Like you don't feel motivated. And that's not depression. It's like the brain resetting after getting like a really quick reward system. Now it's not getting that reward. But the great thing is that natural dopamine can rebuild through healthy habits and through the process of recovery through abstinence. But you have to increase like things like exercise and social interaction and like hobbies and learning, and celebrating small wins. So every time you have a win, you have to kind of remind yourself like, this is great. So that's why the work in recovery should not be just about like, oh, I'm just going to avoid every trigger. You actually are reteaching. You should be reteaching your brain how to produce dopamine naturally again. That's a big part of it. So for instance, you guys can put down like on the worksheet, like your emotional triggers, like when I feel overwhelmed, when there's a lot of stress, I just want to shut off my brain. That's what I'm tempted to use. Or another trigger could be like I'm feeling really down and I think like, oh, what's the point? I just want to feel better, or if I'm anxious and I'm overthinking, I just want something to quiet my mind. Or if I get really angry and I feel like I need to release the tension, that's another time that I use. So put yours down, or for some people, it's like happiness. Like I feel really happy and my brain says, ooh, let's celebrate the way that we used to, like I don't get to feel happy very often. So when I do, I want to enhance it. I want that feeling. So put that down if that's for you. I'm just giving you guys the common ones, but there might be some that is like very specific to you. So I want to really find those. Another one obviously is like when I feel very lonely and I think about how I used to feel like confident when I was, using. So basically, here's the thing, guys. Substance-induced dopamine, it steals your ability to feel real happiness later. I would much rather you invest in real dopamine, the kind that builds happiness over time, like through things like dancing and connection. I put some of those down in the workbook for you guys. Talking to someone that is uplifting, someone that can give you a pep talk, like even like texting somebody that you're close with, like accomplishments, checking something off of a to-do list, like even something small. Creativity releases dopamine, like playing music, even doodling. I don't care, like just anything that expresses you. There's breathing, mindfulness, grounding, journaling, if I haven't said that already, reaching out to your sponsor, laughter, um, all of those things. If, creating music or listening to music. I don't know if I said listening to music earlier. Like these are natural neurochemical reboots. So let's stop the video and take a few minutes to go through the worksheet and write down your emotional triggers. We did physical triggers earlier. Now we're going to do emotional triggers. And if you have any questions, you might want to bring those up at this point. Like, what are your biggest emotional triggers? Like, is it stress? What is it for you? Anger, loneliness, boredom, grief, and what has helped you in the past? Like, once you're ready, then we'll move on to the next one. And that'll be situational triggers.